Welcome to the Confident Retirement Podcast. Is doing the most important things alone a good idea? How comfy are you with your choices when it comes to life's biggest decisions? What is real peace of mind with financial confidence, and how can you get it? Chris Fleming and Mark Peachy are the founders of LPF Advisors in Sarasota, Florida. On the show, they bring together the best and brightest minds to share with you how to have a more confident financial picture. They empower listeners with simple, common sense and financial wisdom. And now, here are your hosts from LPF Advisors.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Confident Retirement Podcast. I am your host here, Chris Fleming, as always. And today I have the honor of welcoming Jonathan Merel to the show. His law firm in the Chicagoland area provides comprehensive guidance, compassionate support in divorce and family law situations. Their philosophy is building strong trust with clients, building a solid legal strategy, and frequent communication. Jonathan, thanks for being here today and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Happy to be.
Thank you. We're going to have some fun. So you have an interesting background story. I was kind of checking you out on your website and stuff like that. So why don't you take me through briefly how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I'm a Chicagoan, born and raised in Chicago, the suburbs, went to law school in Chicago after college, legal career started here, legal career still going here, family here. So I'm deep rooted in Chicago. So went to law school because I really didn't know what else to do after college. I knew I maybe wanted to be an attorney, but wasn't sure. I figured law school would be a good base for whatever I do anyway. So went to law school in the city, ended up getting a law clerking job at a divorce and family law firm that was well established. And I immediately liked it. I'm just not the type of person who's going to to just be behind a computer and, going through a million pieces of paper or transactional. I needed the human interaction and dealing with real human problems. So it immediately clicked with me. Went on to work at a different family law firm after passing the bar exam, was there about 7 years, kind of used that opportunity to obviously learn the law, how to practice law. And I also used it what I liked and didn't like about law firms in general. I knew at the end I always wanted to start my own practice. Mm-hmm. And, I was just kind of gathering tidbits and making mental notes as to what I liked and didn't like. And if I started my own practice, how that would go. And ultimately, I built up the caseload and the courage to start my own practice, went out on my own in 2009 and have continued to grow the practice. It was just me. Now we're up to 20 attorneys, almost 14 years later. And, it's been a great journry, lots of ups and downs along the way, but I'm glad I did it.
Well, you started right after the financial crisis. That was 08, 09. But, I've often heard people say that divorce is kind of recession or financial crisis proof. People are still kind of like in my profession, people still retire, regardless of what's going on. And there are some things that can affect that. But is that, so you mentioned there was like a trigger. Was it just that you happened into the family law clerkship when you first started out? Was there something specific about it that clicked with you and said, was it just the people perspective of it? Or was there something that really triggered or clicked that?
It always kind of piqued my interest, but I kind of fell into the job because I knew my boss at that time and who offered me the job. And I thought, all right, I'll try this. This seems interesting. You flash back to all the LA law and War of the Roses, everything you see on Hollywood. You're like, wow, this must be crazy. I didn't come from parents who were divorced. Yeah. Obviously, divorce is prevalent in our society. Yeah. It just kind of it made me think wow, this may be something I could do. You learn about it. You learn the ins and outs of it. You're dealing, like I said, with people and it's never dull. So my job never gets boring and you think you've seen it all and then you wake up the next day and something crazy happens. So that keeps me going for sure.
Right. The truth is stranger than fiction.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and that's one thing about, crazy is never boring. So it's always going to be interesting and that will keep your interest picked. Okay, so now if you could go back in time, maybe to 2009, talk to the younger you, give the younger Jonathan some advice, something that you know now that you wish you knew when you started your own practice, what do you think that advice would be?
That's a tough one because, people ask me that question a lot. I mean, I guess to take more risks would be something, but that's something I learned early on. And thankfully for me, a lot of the risks I took paid off, not all of them, but I feel like as a business owner, you have to be willing to take a risk or get out of your comfort zone is a better way to put it. Because I remember when I started the firm, like you said, financial crisis, 2009, I already had a young daughter. My second daughter was about to be born. Everyone close to me is like, you're crazy. You're going from like, a salary or paycheck you're getting to starting your own firm. But I knew I was ready despite the economy and where the country was financially.
Yeah.
And that was a risk. But after that, as you continue to grow your firm, there are more risks that present themselves. And hiring your first associate, hiring your first paralegal, all these things, you're thinking, well, I have to pay another person now before I get paid. That's something that's terrifying when you're starting your own business, when you're expanding a young business, when you need to put food on your own table. But, sometimes I think younger business owners or new business owners are somewhat timid and, maybe I don't want to take this risk, when I've learned you have to spend money to make money. Yeah. And even if it is, a risk financially, of course, you don't want to be reckless and do things that can run your business into the ground, but something that might not feel perfectly right, but long-term might help you and grow your business. That's something I learned early on, that you got to do it. And not everything works out, but if you take those risks and, you're working your ass off the whole time, hopefully they pay off.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's business owner 101, and not everyone's cut out for that. And some people try it and they're not good at it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it does take sort of a certain mentality, or you have to be to a certain degree a risk taker, or at least a measured risk taker, in order for that to be successful. I agree with you there. I've certainly found that to be true as well. So we've talked a little bit about how you picked your areas of focus. So maybe walk us through what an ideal client looks like for your firm.
Sure. Well, obviously anyone's ideal client is someone that could, pay for your services. So that always helps. Yeah. It always helps getting paid for the work you do. But, I've never, even though some of my competitors have kind of, given like minimums or established limitations in what clients they would take. And of course, I'm not going to take a client that I don't think is solvent enough to pay me. Right. But I'm not scared about taking clients that might not qualify as like the perfect client, because if I can get a case that's not as complicated and perhaps there's not as a ton of money at issue or at risk, or tons of, complicated issues, I don't mind taking those cases and using them for my younger attorneys to get experience on. So those kind of cases are great for training young lawyers, for training people who are new to the industry, and allowing them to cut their teeth and, work on a case themselves and kind of, give them a longer leash when, there are basic concepts that aren't too complex, and obviously using those experiences for them to grow and gain confidence on their own. So while an ideal client, of course, is, someone with high net worth, and that's usually our target, I often take cases that are on the opposite end of the spectrum just to get, some work and training for my younger people.
Well, and those people, it's all the resources they have, and the situation they're going through is important to them. So you want to try to get them on the other side of it so they can move forward with their life. I'm with you on that. So you probably do a certain level of training, and you guys have kind of maybe a mindset or a philosophy around how you work with people. So what are some common fears or concerns that clients commonly have when they're working with your practice? I'm sure they come in and say, well, I don't care what happens. I just want, this to be okay, and this to be and that'll be okay.
Right. Well, as much as we're lawyers, we are educators, because a lot of people come into family law and divorce. They usually have not gone through it. Of course, some people have, but they really don't know how the process works. And, especially people who are maybe not in charge of the finances, and, not to stereotype, but if there was a woman who, stayed home with the children while the husband went off to work, and they were never really involved in the finances. And then for the first time in their lives, they're presented with a situation where, they have to understand the intricacies of finance and bills and how the money works and what assets they have and where to keep the money. And, that on top of the legal process itself, it's important to educate them about that. So a lot of people come in and they really just don't know a lot, period. And it's our job to teach them how things work. And, of course, that applies to situations involving money, how to allocate parenting time between the children, dividing assets, teaching about retirement accounts, tax implications, all these things that you obviously probably deal with as well with your clients. A good portion of that obviously is involved in family law cases.
Yeah. Okay. And I noticed that you have a real emphasis on your website and also in our conversation about consistent communication. So why do you feel like that's such an important part of the process when you're working with someone?
Yeah. I mean, communication, of course, with a client relationship is key, but, especially in ours, because we have people going through what's often the most emotional and traumatic experiences of their life. And they need someone to talk to. They need that lifeline. And they look to their attorneys, typically first and foremost, to be that lifeline. So I've just experienced, again, as you deal with other law firms or, clients are coming to me from attorneys that they didn't like, I'm always asking, well, what didn't you like about your prior lawyer? Why are you switching law firms? And so many of them are like, I would not hear back from my attorney. I would email them. I would text them, I'd call them, and I wouldn't hear back. And that obviously resonated with me. That was something I prided myself on before that, but even more reason now to stress availability, communication. And of course, there needs to be a line drawn.
Sure,
I'm not 24/7
boundaries
drive through, but at the same time, these people need their lawyers. And, some of them may abuse the concept of us being available all the time. But for the most part, they understand that we have lives outside of work too, but you have to be there for them when they're going through these things, because otherwise, they're going to look elsewhere to a lawyer that does that. And I would never want that to happen.
Yeah. Well, plus they just feel out of touch and they already feel like things are out of control.
Right.
Not having any communication or feedback or to hear back from the person supposed to be helping them is even worse. I've often had clients tell me that not that we over communicate in a bad way, but the reason that people feel connected to us is because of our level of communication that we do. Even when things aren't going so well, we're still communicating with people. And it's amazing to me, whether it's the restaurant business or whatever, how many businesses, they just don't get that. They don't get it right. And then they think, well, what happened or what's the matter? Well, you didn't make the person feel like they were even a human or that they mattered. So what do you want them to do?
Exactly. And that's a good point, though, too. It's not, and again, I talk about this on LinkedIn a good amount. I mean, yes, we are there to be their lawyers.
Yeah.
We're not their friends, so to say, but that doesn't mean you can't act like friends.
Yeah.
And you can't establish a personal connection. And, when they call me, I want them to feel comfortable, not that they're talking to some guy suited up who's, lawyer. You want them to be comfortable, to be able to confide in you, to tell you, obviously, their deepest secrets and, feel that we actually care about them, which we do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you've already kind of mentioned that this is one of life's biggest transitions. And for a lot of people, it's a huge stressor, right? The toughest thing they've ever gone through, almost like a death. So how have you found, what is maybe some tactics or what does your firm do to help kind of de-stress the process for them?
Well, look, as serious it is, I personally, and again, everyone has their different styles. I like to try to make people laugh a little. And, it's not, everything is not, of course, a funny situation, but again, try to lighten the mood a little. Obviously, be a hand holder. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to be fine in the end. Explain to them why. And again, as I alluded to before, you have to have that personal connection like two humans who get along with each other do. Otherwise, so many people have to say, this is business and I need to separate it. And of course, I can't get personally invested in these cases or else I'm going to lose my, sight and perspective and my edge. But that doesn't mean I can't interact with my client as, a friend or a personal manner that make them feel comfortable. And it makes everything work better. So, while we're often wearing that therapist hat along with our lawyer hat, I just reach out and say, try to talk to people to make them comfortable, because a lot of times talking to attorneys or professionals can be intimidating, especially when something like this is going on.
Yeah. Well, what have they said? If we don't laugh, then we're going to cry.
Exactly.
That's what they say. Okay. Now, I know there's probably some misconceptions that people have about what you do or what your attorneys are capable of, right?
Sure.
So what are some common ones that you guys encounter?
About misconceptions about divorce lawyers?
Or about what the attorney can do, what you can accomplish, what you're able to do.
Well, look, even though we don't like it, like I just said, some people think we are their therapists too. Okay. Obviously, we put ourselves out there as their lawyers. And I think a good lawyer, especially in family law, will kind of act as that, shoulder to cry on, because crying often comes, the emotions come. Some expect that. And, because they do, I personally don't mind like being that therapist type person, even though I'm not formally trained as a therapist. Yeah. Over the years in this business, you certainly learn how to, comfort people and, appeal to them so they feel calmed down, because you really do have to calm them down. And a lot of people are so emotionally charged that if you don't kind of get them focused and settled down, they're not going to be able to make rational decisions that are based on logic. They will make them based on emotion, which is when cases really get out of control. Yeah,
that's the outcomes they don't want.
Exactly. But I mean, other expectations, for the most part, they have an expectation that we know everything. And, obviously, while we get to know different areas of the law, which are all involved in family law and divorce, when it comes to being an actuary or valuing a business, that's kind of where we look to experts. Yeah. And, we can't offer opinions on that because we're trained as attorneys, not experts in, valuation or forensic accountants and tax stuff. So, we look for help and expertise in areas. And I think oftentimes clients think, well, why do I need an expert? I have you. Yeah. When experts, of course, can give a much more reasoned analysis based on it.
Right. Well, and that's like going to an eye doctor for an eye surgery, and then they get a toothache and you go, well, we need to see a dentist about that. And they go, well, I'm already here. Can't you just fix my teeth? Right. It's like, well, wait a minute. Those are different.
Yeah, you probably don't want that person fixing your teeth.
Right. I could pull it out if you want, or cut it out. If that's what you want, that's my solution. So, exactly. Okay, now I know with a lot of people with divorce, what they try to do, you try to settle outside, you try to do something amicable, you want to try to avoid going to court. I know very small percentage of situations they actually go to court where the judge is deciding everything. But when they can't come to a mutual agreement, why do you feel like a client would want a successful litigator with experience on their side if it has to go in that direction?
Well, look, every attorney at my firm is a litigator. So we know that that's a possibility. And, while being amicable and resolving cases outside of court should always be the first option, sometimes it's not an option. So, we need to tell the clients that, if plan A doesn't work and plan B is litigating, we're ready to go to battle. I mean, we're in court all the time. And, while it's an unfortunate part of divorce, oftentimes it is necessary, especially if you have a party or opposing counsel who's being unrealistic or giving unrealistic expectations. You need to go to the judge who will hopefully show them how the law works and applies to their case and, squash the issue. So, you also have people who are just so diametrically opposed on everything and hate each other so much that even if it is an easy case, as I say, your case can be easy, but difficult people can make easy cases impossible. Right. So if you have that, setup, your case is going to go through the ringer, of course, and take a long time and probably cost more money.
Yeah. I always say everybody reserves the right to be dysfunctional.
It's true. And they certainly do.
All right. So when there's no lack of conflict in the world today, so let's switch gears just a little bit, Jonathan. Okay. I'm curious, as far as your building your practice and your business goes, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for you going forward?
I think the biggest opportunity for the business I've built is to capitalize on the culture we've built at my firm. I'm like a big culture person, and I think a lot of my competitors have kind of lost sight of that. They don't have, I mean, I understand the climate we're in. A lot of people work from home, and that's kind of the new normal. But I've always, along with the other leaders in my firm, have always, made it a point to keep people in the office as much as we can. And, we have a hybrid where people have the ability to work from home. But once you have people work from home, you really lose that culture, that in-office feeling, and, the place where people want to come in and work and be around people that they like and get along with. And, it's really the machine that we've created requires people to be physically present.
Yeah.
And that has allowed us to create this culture that we have. And I really want to hone in on that and use that as, a starting point and a talking point for trying to recruit the best talent. So while, my other competitors are obviously excellent law firms, a lot of times no one sees each other, and they don't have that ability to just kind of go into a great office environment, rub shoulders with each other, bounce ideas off each other. So I've really stressed that, and, continuing to build the culture I have, which I'm hoping I could use in the future as an opportunity to continue to get good people in the door.
Yeah. Well, I think there are some industries and or jobs or professions where that is really, really important. I put ours in that category as well. I was interviewing somebody recently, and they're really qualified. We're doing a phone interview. They said, I like everything about it. I just have one question. Am I able to do this completely remotely?
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, you missed the whole point. Well, I thought we were on the same track here, but
I know it's hard.
Missed it.
It's hard to deal with those situations. There is an expectation. And again, what I don't understand is this world functioned by going to work forever, as long as people actually went to work.
Right.
Then, of course, we had this crisis, which I understand, changed perspectives, and people couldn't go into the office. But I mean, if that's no longer around and, a concern to people, I don't understand why people just can't go back to work. Yeah. I get the allure of working from home, the freedom. And again, industries are different. There are industries where you don't have to be in an office to function, and, people just kind of operate on their own and it works. But for those human interactions, especially, and I talk about this all the time, I mean, there are attorneys in my industry who have been practicing law for 2 years that have never been in an office and never been in a courtroom. Mm-hmm. That can't be good long-term for the state of the legal system and the legal industry. If you have lawyers who are learning, how to practice law from their couch, and I just don't see how that's good long-term. So we especially stress, making sure our younger attorneys are in the office all the time so they can learn, so they could be a sponge for that information and use that to obviously as a springboard for their career. Yeah.
Well, I thought you could just learn everything on YouTube. Or
Google of course.
It. You don't even have to do that.
You don't even need to take the bar exam. Just watch a few YouTube videos.
That, right. 20 hours of that, you're good. Okay, so now on the flip side of that, Jonathan, you talked about your biggest opportunity. What do you see as your biggest challenge? Maybe an obstacle that you want to overcome for the business?
Well, it's really in the same mold. It's, finding good talent. You and I were kind of talking about that before. It just seems harder to find good people. And whether that's a generational thing or just the state of the job market or the state of our society coming out of the pandemic, it's hard to find people. And, once you find them, and if you are fortunate enough to get them, you have to make them very happy. I mean, this is certainly like an employee dominated industry, and that's fine. I mean, I have no problem doing whatever it takes to, make my employees happy where they're working. And, I always make it a point that's a priority of mine to make sure my employees are happy, but you got to find the right employees first. And, it also puts pressure by, whether it's having to pay higher wages or give more benefits, or not that I don't like doing those things, but sometimes, it gets a little hairy with the bottom line, which at the end of the day, we're running a business that we're trying to be profitable. And, if your overhead's up, it's harder to do that.
Yeah. It's definitely a challenging time I've seen, and just in the hiring, the people that are seeking jobs are definitely have the leverage right now.
For sure.
Yeah. So we're close to the end. Jonathan, if people want to learn more about you or contact you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Easiest way, our ChicagoDivorce.com. It's the easy domain that we have. ChicagoDivorce.com will get you to our website. If you have any questions, I'm always available. You can email me. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody.
Okay, awesome. Listen, I want to thank you, Jonathan, for being here with me today. It's been a great conversation. Very happy to have spent this time with you. And I want to thank everyone for tuning into the Confident Retirement Podcast brought to you by LPF Advisors, where we are hoping to bring the confidence of everyday people to another level, one show at a time. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in and listening. Jonathan, thanks again. Appreciate the conversation, buddy.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for having me. This was awesome.
You've been listening to the Confident Retirement Podcast with Chris and Mark from LPF Advisors. For more information on them and retiring confidently, please visit lpfadvisors.com. If your ears are pleased and your mind is now at ease, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.